Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you guys for tuning into another episode of The Power of Storytelling. Today we have Michael Petersen on with us. Michael is a graduate from Luther College, and he is currently a knowledge management strategist at KMS Lighthouse. Today we talk about how his journey molded him from his successes and his failures into the man he is today. If you guys do enjoy this conversation today, make sure to follow on whatever platform you guys are listening on. Let's go ahead and get into the conversation. Then I kind of just roll into it. But usually, what we like to do is I do want to say thank you for joining the podcast and being on here. We really do appreciate it. But two, if you just want to go ahead and like introduce yourself, kind of talk about either where you were born or where you grew up, or even just like what you do now. I just would like to get a little bit more background information on you, and then we'll kind of just get into conversation.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mike Petersen. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. At the moment, I'm currently working in Dallas as a software salesman at KMS Lighthouse. I just started working here about 4 months ago. And I never thought I was going to be a salesman. Really, my whole life, I was told that I was going to be a doctor. So I went
Mm-hmm.
through, you know, internships at hospitals. I did the whole pre-med thing during college. And it wasn't until COVID hit where, everyone was sent home and we were sitting there in our homes. I had my senior year to finish up. And it wasn't until, I realized that, maybe maybe I didn't want to become a doctor.
Sure.
I don't know. I can imagine that most kids growing up have a path that's set out by their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So I just assumed that that was what everyone was doing, and everyone got to where they were because of the path that they'd started when they were younger.
For sure.
Um, but yeah, for me, it just so happened that I came across an opportunity, and I didn't really have anybody supporting me through this decision. So, as a senior in college, not knowing what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, I took that risk. I'm also in the middle of the city here, so there's airplanes and trucks and stuff.
For
I don't know.
sure. Yeah. No, you're good.
Yeah, so I took the risk, and it ended up paying out for me. Yeah, and that's how I got to where I am today. And I really like my job. I live with surrounded by about 10 of my friends that I just so happen to meet in Dallas.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. So, and I think that is such a common thing is like kind of like what you talked about, where kids as they grow up, they're so heavily influenced by their parents or what their parents want them to do, that either if they stick with that, like most of the time, you're just doing something that you didn't even choose to do, something you're not passionate about. And I think that it's so good to talk about. Hey, even if you like aren't doing exactly what your parents want to do, there's no reason why you shouldn't try other things. I mean, I think that's super important, and I'm glad you talked about that, because now you're doing something that you probably enjoy a lot more and that you're actually passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking with other friends, when I was in high school and in middle school, it seemed like everybody had their own path that they were going to take. We drew up our boards. What do you want to be when you grow up? And originally, I had become a doctor as my future career, but I began to see everybody continue that path of where they wanted to go, and not knowing whether or not they were happy, I just assumed that that was what you had to do to be successful.
For sure.
Uh, Growing up, I had parents that were moderately successful. My dad works at Microsoft. Um, you know, I'd say we're upper middle class. My mom moved from Mexico City. She grew up there, and she got her electrical engineering degree. Moved away from her family to be with my dad. Um, After 6 months, I think they got married, which is that doesn't happen very
For
often.
sure.
So they're taking those kinds of risks. So growing up, I during the recession, I also had my parents lose their jobs. I know that was big for everybody. But having these parents that were always pushing themselves to be successful, and instilled within me that I had to keep that mindset. Um, but I'd say probably for me, the most important thing was when making that decision to kind of leave what my parents thought would make them happy, or leave what I thought would make my parents happy. Um, it just came down to, I guess I wasn't ready to take that jump into being a doctor for the next 8 years. I never really thought about the process of what it took to be a doctor,
Mm.
even though I did the internships, I did the studying for the MCAT. Um, but it wasn't until, I kind of sat down and did some introspection and realized that, maybe it wasn't for me. And I definitely had some judgment from them as well as some of my other friends, as they knew that this is what I've been working for. But I just didn't give up and wanting to do what I wanted to do.
Exactly.
And I think, that decision to not give up, it definitely comes down to discipline. I think that a lot of people may not want to do what they think that they have to do,
Mm.
and they end up falling on maybe a secondary or third tertiary option, and then they can give up too early on those ideas, and then they're stuck in a place where they don't know what they're going to do for the rest of their life. I don't think anybody knows what they're going to do for the rest of their life, right? I mean, I don't know where I have a plan set out for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, but I could lose my voice tomorrow and then I'm not going to be able to sell anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that that's important is, having your plan, but then also knowing that you can adapt. I think that's a such a huge trait and a super common trait that you see with successful people is they adapt. They're not afraid to fail. So they're not afraid to go do things. And even if they fail, they're just going to adapt and overcome whatever like obstacle or whatever failure that was to learn from it and then, adapt to become a better person. So that's awesome. I do want to ask you a few different things about like, how did you get into this job? Like, how did you find it? What were some of the tools that you used? And then what are some of the skills that you feel like you like, or you would want to learn to become a more successful person in the division or the area that you're in?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I did decide to make that change from pre-med into sales, I was given the opportunity. I remember one day I was sitting in my room. It was the middle of COVID, and I'd been doing nothing for the past few weeks, but studying. I don't think everybody was quarantined at this point, and I got a phone call from one of my roommates in college who dropped out, and he told me that he had started this lawn mowing business. So he was lawn mowing every day, and this guy came from, he had no college degree, and he was kicked out of his parents' house because he dropped out of college. So um, my options were to stay with my parents, quarantined, continuing to study for the MCAT, which I didn't want to do, or, try to help this guy run a lawn mowing business. And it sounds pretty obvious what most people would probably do. Both of my parents argued that it was safer to stay on the pre-med route.
For sure.
But I also grew up very blessed. I don't think a lot of people had the same opportunities that I had, where they were upper middle class, where they had mentors. And I felt like if I did decide to continue this pre-med route, this would have been due to it would have been because of my parents. And I wanted to really make something of myself.
For sure.
So I took that risk. My parents didn't support me with it. My brother gave me $100. He said, "Here's your plane ticket money." It was probably paid for half the ticket. Maybe it was $200, but it paid for some of the ticket. I flew out to Minnesota, and yeah, for the next 6 months, my roommate and I, we mowed lawns all summer. This is something anybody can do. You just go and buy a lawnmower. We would knock on doors, cold calling, door knocking, getting business, and yeah, I finished out I had an extra semester I needed to turn in a paper. So I worked in Iowa where I went to college. I was working more at the customer service side of the business. And at this point, we transformed the lawn mowing business into a sales business. So we realized, we don't have to be the ones lawn mowing.
For sure.
We can call people and ask if they want, a lawn mowing service done for them. And we would subcontract these workers out to work for them. I'm sure you've seen Wolf of Wall Street.
For
Great
sure.
movie.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? Sorry?
No, for sure. Yeah. It's a great movie.
Yeah. So he lived in Melville, and his office building was on. I can't even remember the street, but we found an office building on the same street as Jordan Belfort.
Wow.
And it was us two. And, I recruited a few people that went to my gym that I knew growing up, that were either car salesmen or had nothing going for them at that point in their lives. I convinced them to take that risk with me. And, we were we were 21, 22 years old. So we, nothing really, there's nothing ahead of us that can really stop us.
For sure.
So we made that trip to New York. We lived there for about 6 months, learned from all the failures that we had. We were also working 7 days a week, uh, 10 hours, 12-hour days. And the reason we were putting in this time and this effort was because of all the risk that we had taken, right? The higher the risk, the more you have to kind of put into it to make sure that it pays off.
Exactly.
Um, and, we were somewhat successful there. It costs a lot to live in New York. So I'd say I left New York with very little profit. More so, I left with lessons that, you can't really learn anywhere else. We continued this business for about another year. We moved to Chicago, expanded it there, and we finished off in Minnesota, Minneapolis, downtown. And yeah, it was a great experience. But sometimes, you're put into a place where you know that you shouldn't be, and maybe that's not the plan that God has for you. So I realized that this wasn't somewhere that I wanted to be. This business wasn't going to be my end all be all. So I had taken the risk to get to this point. I knew that I could get myself here alone again or in any other industry. So I moved back in with my parents after 2 years of working there. I jumped straight into trying to find ways to make money. They offered me jobs as counselors in some of the middle schools, but as I had a psychology degree from college, but it still wasn't what I wanted to do. So I started day trading a little bit and made some money there. I invested what I made from this business into a laptop, where then I was able to kind of start my own business from there. And after about 3 months, I'm sure you heard of the crypto crash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cryptocurrency, for anybody that doesn't understand, it's pretty much a currency that's made up on a blockchain where people can. It's a non-centralized currency that isn't controlled by the government, by the SEC. So once crypto crashed, I lost everything again. So now I was at ground zero. For the second time, I was 24 years old, and I had a friend that was moving to Dallas, and he needed a roommate. So I hopped on a plane, hopped in my car, actually. I drove 20 hours down to Dallas, found a beginner sales job. Within 6 months, I excelled. I made it to the top there and was able to interview for a software sales position. And yeah, that's where I've been for the past 4 months. It's been a crazy ride, but I'm not exactly where I want to be right now, but the future holds so much. And as long as I keep this mindset, I think that I can hopefully, well, not even hopefully, I know I can reach my goals. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take. Right.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's phenomenal. I love the story behind it, because what you were talking about, how you went through all this and you tried these different businesses, and you were pushing, working really hard and learning from your failures. And then you said how you came back and you like started from ground zero again. But the thing that people don't realize, like a lot of people will see that as like a failure, but what I see out of it is you gained so much experience, so much knowledge through you doing all of these things, whether they became a multi-billion-dollar business or whether you failed a ton and of course made enough money to survive and make a little bit of profit. But whenever you go back to this position, you've now done so much throughout this period that you are a completely different person. You've gained a ton of skills. You have the experience. You've gained a little bit of confidence and reps. And I think that's super important. And that's how you're now in this position that you're in, is because of all that time that you spent, working hard, even though it didn't have any monetary outcome. You've gained so many skills. That's super important.
Yeah. And I do agree, with what you were saying, that just because I didn't succeed, it doesn't mean that I failed.
Exactly.
I mean, the only definition of failure is it's when you quit.
Yep.
You can only fail or lose when you quit. And I'm not going to stop myself from achieving these goals. And I know for me, because I had gone through this 2-year sales expedition, I had obtained this skill to sell. So I knew that that's where I was going to be.
For sure.
But even if sales wasn't something that I found myself in, or wanting to stay in after that time period, I was looking at vending machines that I could buy and set up at the gym. And I'd go to gyms and I'd ask them if I could put vending machines in there. or I was, calling other lawn care businesses when I wasn't working, trying to set up another lawn care business back when I was living with my parents. So there's no such thing as, one path that's the end all be all. You have to create your own path. And as difficult as it may be, figuring out what that is, before I was a day trading cryptocurrency, I had put, 50 hours into YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a college degree to do anything. YouTube is free for everybody.
Exactly.
So even if it starts out with, how to start your own business, good business ideas. And a lot of people may not understand that that's how easy it is to start something. And, I have a pretty good job now, but I'm nowhere where I want to be. I still want to start my own business again. I have multiple flows of income, whether it's, I have another job I'm going to later today. I went to the hospital and I asked if they needed a translator for Spanish. So I have a translating job at 4:00. And then I'm an official during a referee during the season. So
nice.
Just extra ways to make money. And money doesn't define happiness either. Right.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely something to it, as like what you said, money doesn't define happiness, but I think the act of, pursuing anything that you can and believing that you can be, bigger or better than you are right now, or even if it is make more money than you are right now, that process of pushing and finding new ways, that will bring happiness. That'll bring that respect that you should have for yourself because you're putting in the work. I think that's where a lot of that like negativity resides, is when you should be doing something, but you just, you tell yourself, I'm just going to relax today. Or you make an excuse for yourself because in the back of your head that you should be doing more. And once you start doing more, and once you start doing what you're capable of, that self-respect that you get, that true happiness, is where that really shines. But I do have one more question I do like to ask. You said like YouTube, you watch a lot of YouTube, and this is where you learned a lot of your stuff. And I just want to ask, is there any specific, like maybe not even like a channel, but things to search, or what helped you in the process of becoming better, either through YouTube, or what resources would you like to give out to someone like that is trying to find better resources or find better skills? What would you tell them to kind of look for?
Yeah. So for me, I would say that the information aspect isn't as important as like what you were saying, bettering yourself.
For sure.
Well, before I did any research, I would type in, motivational video on YouTube, and I would only fill my thoughts with these YouTube videos. David Goggins, I don't know if you're familiar with who he is, but he's a, ultra runner who came from nothing and made something of himself.
For sure.
For anybody who doesn't know who that is. And he's like a role model of mine. So I would listen to David Goggins every day, and knowing that the business that I created in New York, or that I was a co-founder of, I wasn't making a base salary. Everything was commission.
For sure.
So we had to create this work in order to get paid. And there were weeks that, we weren't creating work and we weren't getting paid. So by filling these positive thoughts in my head, through the darkest times that I've been through, it was able to mold my brain, callous the mind, so that anything hard that comes up in my life, I know that was able to get through that. So I listen to David Goggins motivational videos, and what they've taught me is that everything in life comes down to consistency. It doesn't matter if I'm the best salesperson. It doesn't matter if I'm the strongest in the gym. If I'm going to the gym 5 days a week, even when I'm tired, I know that it's going to pay off. If I take cold showers. So the days today, I took a warm shower for the first time in a really long time. And as the warm shower was finishing up, I felt a little groggy, and I forced myself to, crank that shower all the way to freezing cold for 3 or 4 minutes, because it's the consistency. You have to stay with what has created this mind that's calloused. And once you start getting too comfortable, as humans, we like consistency. So we'll stay with that comfort, and we'll feel like it's okay. So if you can create an environment that's uncomfortable, then when your life gets a little uncomfortable, you'll be so used to it, And yeah, those motivational videos definitely helped me get through and learn that mindset.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's something that people try to stay away from, or at least like people that are not where they want to be, is they, if they see the uncomfort zone, or the zone that isn't comfortable, that isn't relaxing, they stay away from it. They avoid it. But once you realize that in that area, that uncomfortability, that zone is where you really grow. That zone is where you build that confidence. If you try to do as many things as you can every day that makes you uncomfortable, you will become a completely different person. You'll become such a better person. And I think that that's super useful for a lot of people that are kind of looking for, what should I be doing? Just do something that makes you uncomfortable. Do something new. Do something that you don't know, and go fail and learn from it. And I think that's amazing. That's awesome, dude. I really don't have anything else other to ask right now. I do really appreciate you for being on. And yeah, thank you, Michael. Do you have anything else you want to say real quick before we end it?
Yeah, I guess to leave here, I'd say that no matter what it is that you want to do, you don't lose until you give up, right? So right now, I'm like I said, I have a bunch of different things on my plate, and I'm not perfect either. The past week, I probably woke up later than I have been for the past couple of years, and it's kind of me falling into that comfort zone. So to be successful, it doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but recognizing that you're falling into those bad habits. You are a slave to your bad habits.
For
So
sure.
if you're going to be a slave to anything, you might as well be a slave to the good habits
For
that
sure.
you have in your life. Eating healthy, exercising, and everybody else should also go read. Uh, I believe it's called "The World's Greatest Salesman." Has You don't even need to be in sales to connect with the author there. It's a great book though.
That's awesome, man. No, thank you so much. Is there if you want to go ahead and say like some of your social media or something, just so people can find a way to get connected with you? You want to go ahead and shout that out?
Yeah, sure. So I don't really use too much social media. I think social media is one of those attention grabbers. But
Yeah.
you guys can go follow me on LinkedIn, Michael Petersen. I work for KMS Lighthouse. So if you just type in Michael Petersen, KMS Lighthouse, I'm posting a lot on there. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.